Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for being here. As you know, we're dealing with a very dynamic situation. Change in what gets reported to you and to the residents of Austin is going to be inevitable. But Austin Energy is in a position where it needs to give people clear and accurate information so that they can plan and proceed accordingly. So that is why we're following up on the press conference we had earlier today and be able to provide additional information and to answer questions that people we know have, people in the public we know have about what's going on. So as before, we have here with us the city manager, and we have the general manager of Austin Energy and the director of our water department, so that technical questions can be asked and you can get answers to those questions. But before we go to them, I want to turn the podium over to the county judge, Andy Brown.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm Travis County Judge Andy Brown. I want to thank y'all very much for joining us. I'm joined today from the county side, Hector Nieto and Chuck Brotherton. I think that's it. Yep. And just want to report that we're making good progress in clearing roads across the county, but there's a ton of work to do. Our crews that have been out today could use your help to speed up the process, and also we're looking at ways to help them speed up the process, because as we get reports back from the roads and the streets of the county, it seems like the number of trees down and debris out there is just massive. And so we're looking at declaring a disaster declaration in conjunction with the city of Austin to see if that will help us on the cleanup efforts. You can also report tree limbs or debris blocking county roads to our dispatch at 512-854-9433, or you can email tnr.dispatch@traviscountytx.gov. For issues on Austin City roads or right-of-ways, you can just call 311. I would also like to again warn everyone of just how dangerous the situation is. If you're going out, keep an eye out for falling ice, tree limbs, or power lines in the road. And if you're driving, the road still could be slippery. If you have somewhere to go, please take it slow. And let's all work together to ensure that our energy crews have easy access to high priority areas. As we recover, our community is going to have additional needs. I spent this afternoon at the Central Texas Food Bank, who, like many people in Austin, is without power still. They are getting things up and running again, figuring out ways to do the distribution as best they can right now. And once their power is back, they have 21 counties to serve. They've been down for at least 3 days now, and so there's a lot of need that they have. So I'd encourage everyone to join me in volunteering with them next week. So thank you very much, and thank you for working together.
Well, again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Spencer Cronk, the Austin City Manager, and just want you to know that, as you know, all weather-related incidents are evolving fluid situations, and every incident is unique in its own way. As city governments, we are sometimes faced with striking a balance between sharing estimates and timelines on objectives and spending time to ensure our estimates are exact and precise. But in the real world, as you've seen today, getting that balance right is not always easy. But please know that we do our best to provide those estimates on how things are going, and we do it based on the best information at the time. I want to assure this community that once we have completed the work of restoring power, we will look to the lessons learned and build on our response for future weather-related incidents. But since we last spoke, our staff has continued to work hard on restoring power, sheltering people, and keeping people safe. And we're here to provide updates on all of that. I'm joined, as the mayor said, by Austin Energy General Manager Jackie Sargent and Austin Water Director Shay Ralston, and I'm going to turn it over to Jackie Sargent. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Good afternoon. I'm here to provide you with an update on Austin Energy operations. While the weather conditions have greatly improved, Austin Energy has determined we are unable to provide a specific system-wide restoration estimate. We had hoped to make more progress today on restorations, and that simply has not happened. And here's why. The majority of outages from this winter storm are complex, involving heavy construction equipment in areas that are sometimes impassable due to downed trees and branches. Additionally, we are continuing to experience repeated outages, meaning ice, trees, and tree limbs continue to knock out power to the same circuits that crews have just restored. Crews are also being extra careful to avoid sheets of ice, icicles, and tree branches that may snap back as they thaw. As a result, full restoration will take longer than initially anticipated. We understand that this makes an already challenging situation even more difficult. We have more than 100 crews and additional resources headed to our area to assist with restoration efforts. We are grateful for the assistance of our neighboring utilities and others who are providing our much-needed assistance. We appreciate the patience as our customers as our line workers brave the conditions and work with the rest of our staff to restore power. Also, please be advised that crews will be knocking on doors to gain access to our equipment. AE personnel will be clearly marked and badged, but I ask that you please allow them access as needed to get to the equipment. Elton Richards, my VP of Field Ops, was out in the field today and will now share some of what he saw. Elton?
Thanks, Jackie. Hey, what's up, folks? Thanks for letting me come here and share what I was out today. I'm Elton Richards. I'm the Vice President of Field Operations for Austin Energy. Visited the crews today just to see if they need anything. And what is unique about this storm, first of all, I've been doing this over 20-something years, and I haven't seen this much devastation outside of tornadoes up north. The problem is the ice and the weight. So I know earlier this morning on the presentation and the news, it was talked about vegetation management. I'm telling you guys, this isn't a veg management issue. The areas that we had actually trimmed, and I thank the Spencer and the City Council for letting my guys get back to that trimming cycle, and we've been doing it for about 3 years now, even outside the 15 feet above where we cut, and it is cut to standard, the ice that was on those branches caved them on top of. So that was one. Seen that before, wasn't a big surprise. We've got trees out there that are 50, 60 feet tall that are coming down on lines, breaking primary cable, communications cable, poles. You've seen the cars and houses as damage. Seen that one, so, you know, kind of expected that one. But a third one I've never seen before was one of the jobs I was on today out on Slaughter Lane. On the right-hand side of the road was all communication lines. That was it. And one communication pole had a guy anchor, which is that metal anchor wire that comes down and goes into the ground, and it goes across to our pole, and that's what kind of secures their pole. Well, the large tree, it actually fell on the communication wire, pushed that pole over, gave slack on our pole, it leaned over, and so even though it was in a trimmed area, it then pushed it 10 feet into the vegetation. So it's just horrendous out there, and I just really appreciate my guys, and I can tell you, we had multiple people coming by, and I really appreciate the Austin Energy customers that told my guys thanks for what they were doing. They've been working around the clock. As Jackie said, we brought in multiple crews. Thank you, New Brunsfield, CenterPoint Energy, CPS is sending crews tomorrow, and Bird Electric, and we're really working hard to get the service restored for the customers of Austin Energy. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Shay Rolson, Director of Austin Water, and I'm here to provide you a system update for our water system. So some good news, our treatment plants have been operating normally throughout this cold weather, and there is plenty of water in the distribution system. Unlike Winter Storm Uri, water demands have been in normal ranges, and we just have not seen the kind of breaks on the private side and the public side that we saw during Uri. So overall, water storage levels are healthy in the distribution system. So we have several dozen pump stations that we use to move water around our system so that the water gets to where the customers need it. and that's what provides water pressure in our system. And our crews have been working 24/7 since this event began to keep those pump stations operational. And we've worked closely with Austin Energy to prioritize repairs and restoration of power when power has gone out at those pump stations. And we have had many power outages, and we've had pump stations go out of power and come back in and go out again. It's been a very dynamic situation. Just in the space of a few hours, we might have one pump station out of power in our system, and then none, and then 3. So our crews continue to move around our distribution system, restoring power, staying on site, making sure that everything is operating. Earlier today, we were concerned about water storage in Southwest Austin, but we've regained power to the Davis Lane pump station thanks to truly heroic efforts on the part of Austin Energy, and we're replenishing storage levels there. So intermittent power outages are still happening around town, and we continue to monitor our system closely, but we do not anticipate the need to issue any kind of citywide water outage or boil water notice. We have had power outages that have affected our ability to serve water in small pockets of our system. There's 2 small pockets where we were unable to maintain water storage levels, and we are working directly with those customers. It's about just shy of 40 customers. So we're working directly with them, delivering water to them, and once we restore water service, they will have to boil it until we're able to clear it, and then we will do that. So overall, I just want to just give gratitude and thanks to the Austin Water crews who have been working 24/7, who have been collaborating so closely with Austin Energy. And thank you to our customers for your patience, for reaching out to us. As you get back to normal tomorrow when it's sunny and warm, we ask that you consider conserving water as we make our way back to normal operations throughout our distribution system. If the less water you use, the less the tanks draw down. That just gives us more time when we have a power outage to restore a pump station operation and keep our storage levels healthy in the system. So together, we will get through this successfully. Thank you.
All right, folks, I'm going to open it up for questions. Start right here, CBS.
Yes, a lot of people are very frustrated with the way that they feel, the city has handled this response. What's being done to prevent this from happening in the future?
I can start with that.
Okay.
Well, thank you. With every response, we look at how we can do things better in the future, and every response is unique. And so we took the lessons learned that we had from Winter Storm Uri, from previous water boil notices, and applied them to this situation. But this situation was unique, and so it had its own unique set of challenges. We know that we'll be doing the same after-action reports and ensuring that we're getting as much information as we can in the manner that our community can expect that to do that. So I'll see if Austin Energy wants to add anything, but certainly we always are learning from these experiences so we can do better in the future.
Can you go into detail about those lessons learned specifically, or?
Sure. So I think part of it is trying to communicate what we can in real time. And so the purpose of this press conference is also a recognition that we told you something earlier today, and we know that the situation has changed based on what we're seeing on the ground, and we wanted to get in front of our community so you can be making decisions based on that more accurate information.
Something from the mayor's perspective, and that is that the Austin City Council has an oversight committee for Austin Energy, and that is chaired by Chair Leslie Poole, who's a council member on the Austin City Council. You should anticipate that as early as next Tuesday, we will have at a work session, we have a scheduled work session next Tuesday, we will have an opportunity then to begin the process of looking at it from the standpoint of the mayor and council. What I anticipate will happen on that Tuesday is we will get a report on the status of everything from Austin Energy to water to resource recovery, all the different things that we're having to deal with and we're reporting on here. That will be the first step toward a full meeting of the Oversight Committee. And by the way, when I say Oversight Committee, it is a committee of the whole council. So everybody is on this. That meeting, the first meeting of that committee is the February 21st. That is in conjunction with one of our other work sessions, another work session we have scheduled. And so questions will begin. Obviously, they're already beginning, but right now we know we have people that can answer those questions that are busy doing other things in the field. That being said, Tuesday we'll start that process, and then we will have a more in-depth meeting on February 21st, because we need to have questions answered, including how we communicate with the public, how we make sure the public knows what's going on, and how we prevent this sort of incident in the future.
Okay, Sam.
I have a water question and a power question. I'll start with power. What's the average time it takes per fix on a line right now, given everything?
Well, it's really a challenging question to answer, and the reason for that is because of the complexity of the situation and the obstacles and things that our crews are running into. So there is no average restoration time that we can give you at this time.
Is it taking up to 6 hours at some points? Is there any kind of range we can get with that?
You know, I'm going to let Elton answer that question because he's in charge of the field ops. Elton?
Yes, ma'am. The problem with trying to give an average time is there's no average. And what I mean by that is if you take a circuit which goes from a substation through multiple subdivisions to another substation potentially, let's say you got 3,000 customers on there. It could be as simple as just a limb laying on the line. If it is, then the crew goes out, 30 minutes to set up, an hour to trim it, 30 minutes to make sure they're clear, and it's done. So a 2-hour job. Now take that same job with that same line, add a fully grown tree that goes into primary, breaks 2 poles and drops about 70 to 100 foot of primary. Now you're into 8 to 10 hour restoration. Then some of them are even more complex than that, and that's really what we're running into this one. Like I said, I've only been here 3 years, but even in Storm Uri, most of the damage was consolidated in one area when you talk about the circuit, that line. Here, the reason we're getting pounded is because there's like 3 different situations. So what would normally be a 4-hour repair on a line is now taking 12 hours because they're having to go to 3 different ones. Now, I'll tell you, one thing that we're really good about is adapting. And what we've done in the past is we send a bed crew out, we do a patrol on it, they trim it, and then the crews come in to do the repair. What we've adjusted on based upon the damage this time is we're actually assigning the vegetation management crews with the construction crew and the repair crew, so they're all traveling at the same time. And we did the same thing with the contractors. So I think what you're going to see in the next 24 hours is a massive decline in the customer count and also the lines repairs, if that helps. Say again?
Are limbs continuing to fall on power lines?
With the temperature increase today has probably been the best day that we've only seen ice dropping down. Before, what was happening is some of the crews would actually close in, re-energize the line, look down and see another limb fall from about 30 feet above, arc flash, and then open it back up again. So the rain that we had yesterday with the above temperatures was actually a godsend for us.
And then for Austin Water, you had mentioned currently right now there's about 40 customers without water. Is that correct? Do we anticipate that number rising? What factors could contribute to that?
We don't anticipate that number rising. Those are in small pockets that have small systems pumping into them, and so it's very specific to those particular areas of our system.
What would happen if people don't conserve tomorrow?
Well, I think we are producing plenty of water and we are keeping our tanks full. So the benefit of conservation is to just give us a little bit more flexibility to be able to respond to this evolving situation.
I know there have been warming shelters for people who are without power the last couple of days, but is there any sort of long-term plan set in place for families who are going to be out of power for potentially up to like 5 or 6 days?
Yeah, well, certainly we work with our nonprofit providers and other resources, but led by public health through our Emergency Operations Center to provide those types of services. Again, I'll just ask the community to know, if you do need a place to stay tonight, you can either go to One Texas Center and we will be transporting you to our cold weather shelters. We have not turned anyone away during this entire operation, and we will keep those open as long as they're needed. We are also going to be opening up full operations of our city tomorrow, and so our libraries, our rec centers, where they're available to be open, they will be open as warming centers for our public tomorrow.
This is for Austin Energy. We've heard from some residents who say they have tree limbs on power lines, and they say that's a fire hazard, and no one has been able to come out to look at that. What is the prioritization looking like for those with that situation, and then also those with no power?
So if a limb is currently right on a line and there is no arcing that is going on, and with the moisture that we've had and the moisture on the tree limbs, I would say that there's less of a fire impact. Now, if people were to see arcing and that sort of thing, we would want them to report that. They certainly can use our resources and let us know, make sure that we're aware of that situation. But if there's not currently a power outage, we're going to focus on trying to get power restored.
Yeah. Also for Austin Energy, do you have any backlog of tree trimming and maintenance? And will there be any review or changes to your policies and practices around that?
So I'm going to let Elton answer that question because vegetation management falls under his purview. But I will say that we always do an after-action review when we have incidents, especially of this magnitude, and we will be looking at our policies and seeing if there are adjustments that we need to make, and we'll be working with our stakeholders and our governing board to implement those. Is there something you want to add, Elton?
Yeah, so again, with transparency, is there a backlog? Absolutely there is, and I'll tell you why. Prior to me arriving here, the city council at that time had restricted the trimming on the trees down to an unsustainable manner. The CEO that came in, Charles Dickerson, presented to the council to get it back to the industry standard, which we are now doing between fast growth and slow growth. We increased our budget by twice 2 years ago, and since that time we have been just going just pounding on the vegetation. It's probably going to take another 3 years to get the whole city back on a normal cycle, but our concentration was we prioritized which ones had the wildfire locations, worked with the council members in those areas. Then we also looked at ones which had the most outages that had occurred, and then we worked with the council member in those areas. So that's what we concentrated on, was those two areas. That's our highest return for the time that we had. So that's where we're at.
Just
within the past 6 months, Austin Energy customers have seen 2 rate increases.
Oh, I'm backing out of that one.
What do you have to say to those citizens who are saying, why are we continuing to pay more if we can't depend on the services when we need them the most?
So there are two different components to our rates: our power supply adjustment, pass-through charges, our regulatory charge, our community benefits charge. One was the power supply adjustment that was increased last fall, and I explained that in detail this morning. The other adjustment that we made was to our base rates, and the base rates pay for Elton's crews. They pay for the tree trimming, the vegetation management. They pay for the poles. They pay for our infrastructure. It pays for our debt service. We have not had an increase in base rates in 10 years. And as a matter of fact, we decreased base rates by $42.5 million in 2017. I'm sure all of you realize how inflation has impacted things, how we have had to add resources and incur additional costs. And so we needed to go in, but we didn't ask for anything more than what we needed so that we could have those funds to help us to maintain our system going forward. And those rates don't go into effect until March 1st.
Do last question with KXN.
Do you guys guys have a plan on how to get communication out to people without power who are waiting for these updates?
So that's always a challenge, and we will be looking at that again. Hopefully people that do not have power, so they're not going to turn on the TV, right, and get the news. Hopefully they have a cell phone, resources like that, and we're utilizing those, and that they are able to perhaps get charging from neighbors. So neighbors helping neighbors, which is one thing that's really attracted me to this community, is how much people care about one another and are there to support each other. So that's always a challenge, but we'll work with our resources, our communications department, and see if we can't use some of our other partners to help us with those
What
communications.
if they don't have a cell phone? What if they need to be informed in person or another way?
You know, that's a challenge that we haven't been able to crack at this point, but that is something that we'll be continuing to look at, because we know that people are hungry for communications, and especially when you're sitting there without power, you just